everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlot Banter where we view and review all 10 Best Picture nominees. My name is Timo, joined this evening by Tucker, Tanner, and Abram, and today we are going to discuss the film called Woman Talking from last year, as all of our Best Picture nominees are. This one directed by Sarah Polley, starring Rooney Mara, that's how you say her name, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, a little bit of Frances McDormand in there too.
I can miss it.
True.
Yeah. This is a movie that I think is at least attempting to make some pretty big waves in the industry. And we are going to talk about it. What we liked, what we didn't like, everything about this movie we're going to hit. But before we do that, we should go over what film we talked about last time, because as you might recall, it was Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, or should I say Sammy Fabelman's The Spielbergers.
Oh, whoa. Insane.
We gave that film a flat 9.0, which puts it at the 4th place on our list. So in pretty good company, right around Tar and the Banshees of Inisherin.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Can I just have something on my mind.
Okay.
I've been thinking about the Banshees
Is it related
episode.
to movies? Okay.
Yes. I've been thinking about the Banshees episode. And the Banshees episode is not out as of the time that this is happening.
Will
so this
be.
is,
Soon.
but I mean, I was how they're recording.
Yeah,
And I've been preempting my mind the comments we're going to get, because we call him Pedrick or something to that effect. That's not how you pronounce it, right?
It's pretty
More like
similar.
Auric. It's more like an O sound. I've been thinking about this
well,
last couple days.
I think I fluctuated a number of times, but I feel like I was saying like Padrick.
I think it's kind of like Patrick, but messed up.
Yeah.
This is just an apology.
'Cause it's Irish.
I'm preempting the comments we're going to get, most likely, frankly, probably from Phil in the Discord.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just preempting. Phil, you're welcome, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Abram, you are so worried about comments. Why don't you worry about our featured comment for this week?
Speaking of the Discord, Timo, I also just want to shout out a new member of our Discord,
Oh yeah.
Al Naz,
We
who
love
has been leaving some really awesome comments to make us feel good and seem important, praising Quest. But more excitingly, he's been engaging fairly regularly in conversations just about film. So if you want to talk to us about film more regularly than just the comment section, join our Discord. Link is in all the YouTube videos.
And if you feel like every single time we put out a new Quest video and it's not the movies that you care about, you can come talk to us about the movies you like in the Discord.
Yeah, it's true.
True.
There is an option.
Personalized film reviews, thoughts, all of that good stuff
Yeah.
for
Mostly
you
arguments.
in the Discord.
Mostly
Mostly
argument.
Mostly arguments with the MCU.
It
Yeah.
is Discord after all. Okay, hit us with that comment, Abram. I want to talk about this
Let's
movie.
go.
Yes. The comment comes from another new viewer, excitingly, and I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm sorry.
Perfect.
But Vincente Torres Elias Vitz is what I'm going to go with.
Dang,
Don't know
sure,
if it's
more
right.
names?
I apologize. Comment again and reprimand me, because this comment is quite good. They write on our Elvis review the following. Elvis has effective dramatic moments, but overall it's an overly long by-the-numbers biopic. You can't even call it unique, since there have already been other dramatizations about the life of the king of rock and roll, including the 2005 miniseries of the same name. While we're on the subject, I'm going to write a sentence that I never thought I would write. Fucking Randy Quaid did a better job than Tom Hanks. What world are we living in? But yeah, his performance is bafflingly bad, while Austin Butler's is very good. You'd think that a director known for his colorful and energetic style would be the perfect choice to make a movie about a man who was showmanship personified. Unfortunately, Baz Luhrmann's aesthetic decisions feel limited. The sets, props, and costumes aren't hyper-stylized because they're meant to be historically accurate. His distinct vision is still present when it comes to Mandy Walker's cinematography and Jonathan Redmond and Matt Villa's editing, except that those elements aren't in sync with the beat of the song played in each scene. Most of the cuts, angles, and camera movements seem to happen at random. 5 out of 10. What do we think?
Well,
I
obviously,
dissent.
Agree to
we
disagree.
I dissent.
I just sent.
Next time, yeah, my one critique on your comment, very well written, very thoughtful, bringing into conversation on other versions of Elvis's life I wasn't familiar with. It's all really great. One piece of feedback, though, agree with us in the next comment.
Yes, be
Yeah.
right next time.
Constructive
It's hard.
criticism for you specifically, not for us. Don't do any sort of criticism of us. I would
Dear
say.
commenters, the quickest way to the featured comment section of the next episode is to pat our egos.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There we go.
Well, that's
Enter the
actually
long
true, because
comment.
whenever there's one that says I agree with Abram, he specifically picks out that one.
That's
and
true,
reads
he
it.
does.
You could
That's
disagree with
true.
Abram, but as long as you wrote that, he just likes reading it out loud.
Yeah, if you signal my name somewhere in there, I'll
Sure.
I'll find
He's
it.
like Candyman. Say it too many times. He's like, must read your comment.
All right. Let's get into the episode.
Settle down. Let's talk about a very serious and very unfunny movie, Women Talking. What did you guys think of it? Or should we give a little plot synopsis of the film first? Or should we just dive into our thoughts?
You know what, Timo? I'll do both. I'll give a little context. I'll give a little plot synopsis. So what we have here in Women Talking, it is based on a 2018 novel, I believe, of the same name. Takes place in an undisclosed location in North America. I would say. Could be Canada, could be U.S. Who's to say? But it is the year 2010, and you wouldn't know it because we are in a Mennonite colony. The women are not taught to read or write. At least
Pretty
they
sure
hardly
it
are.
was the Mennonites.
Tanner, can I actually
Yes.
interject? 'Cause I have a question
Go for
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
At risk of tarring myself again and missing
Mhm.
information,
I got you, Abram.
was it known that this film takes place in 2010 widely? Because I was under the assumption that it was a period piece from like colonial America.
I mean, largely, from the trailers and stuff like that, you wouldn't really know. I mean, you do see
Sure.
like the car drive past in the trailers. So you're like, oh, maybe it's like 1960s, 70s, maybe. But no, it is a contemporary film. And I will say, based on a 2018 novel, which is a sort of fictional response to a similar incident that happened in a Mennonite colony in the mid 2000s in Bolivia. So this is the sort of the transition of events that got us to the film Women Talking. But anyway, we're in a Mennonite colony, obviously very unequal based on gender and sex. Women are not taught to read or write; they are taught to be servants to their husbands. And of course, the film is about years and years of rape and abuse that these women have been subjected to by the men of the colony. All of a sudden, all the men go off to town to sort of pay bail for one of the men who has been taken to jail because of these things. And the women have to decide. They form a sort of group, a council, if you will, to decide whether they should stay and fight and try to change the colony for the better, or if they should abandon the colony altogether, pick up their lives, and go on into the horizon to find something else for themselves. And the film is largely concerned with those discussions. What are the pros and cons of these things, and the perspectives and relationships of the women on this council and in this colony.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go any farther, I'm going to issue a trigger warning because this movie deals heavily with themes of sexual assault and rape, and there's absolutely no way we can talk about it without also discussing those. So, if you can't handle that kind of stuff, like probably tune out this episode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And
Now,
your thoughts, Tanner? You were going to give us the double whammy.
yes, I'll give you the thoughts here as well. I saw this roughly a month ago. Had to drive over an hour to go to a different theater to see this because not widely released. Women Talking, unfortunately.
We can talk about that later. Good
Yeah,
God,
we'll
yeah.
But I really enjoyed it that time. I thought it was very powerful. I loved the performances in here. Very pure ensemble film, as Tucker and I were just talking about earlier this evening. And yeah, powerful performances, great script from Sarah Polley based on that, adapting from that novel. I know there are some dissenters about the color grading, cinematography choices in this film. We'll get to all that in due time, but overall, very much an enjoyer of Women Talking.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go next. Just hop in, upset the order of things, and say that while
Proverbial apple cart.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This film I found to be really difficult to watch in terms of its content and the way that it tells its story. Not in like a bad way, it tells its story. I think in like the literal construction of how it conveys information is very difficult at times to like sit there and keep my eyes open as I watch these horrible, horrible things be shown and also discussed and really like worked through. But I found that because it's so difficult to watch, it is very, very powerful because it doesn't hold anything back at all. And what the film has to say, I think, is a unique and nuanced way of winding your way through this maze of topics and issues about like what do these women do when they are faced with this unimaginably horrible situation. And so I think that the film does a lot of the basics very well and then tells us a unique and thought-provoking story that really questions, it questions me. I'm thinking, oh, you just got to stand up and fight. Fight for your right, for what you believe in. And the film says, well, hold on. Let's think about that. Let's really think about what we are doing. And I appreciate the time and space that it gives to these very, very important discussions. But I will note, this is like the shortest movie we've seen, and it actually felt like the longest, which is that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think Women Talking is a very sobering film for a number of reasons. It's What's interesting about it is the plot is really in the name. It took as we got to maybe 30 minutes into the film or so, and I recognized, oh, we are really just going to be having this dialogue for the hour and 40. There's really not a whole lot of plot movement there, really. It is literally just about these women talking. And I think that speaks to maybe the issues with pacing, as we can talk about, Timo, because I think you're right in part. But I think it also speaks to the novelty of the script and the ways that it forces you to remain in this moment. I think that the ways it constructs this situation in which the only respite from these layered dialogue conversations are these absolutely brutal and graphic asides of the women after they've been raped or assaulted in however way they were. It feels like you can't escape the moment, and any attempt the film makes to literally escape that barn is arguably more horrifying than the implications of what they're dealing with within it. And I think that to that end, the script is absolutely beautiful. I'm not sure I say the same about the cinematography, and we can talk about that. But I think that Women Talking is a very complete and powerful and sobering vision. But I do think that a lot of that can be attributed almost entirely to script and performance. I'm not sure that the film really does a whole lot for me beyond that. So it's in this interesting space for me where I think that this is an essential film to watch if you can stomach the intense imagery and subject matter. But I wouldn't say for me this is even really in the contention for Best Picture, in my opinion. I don't think the holistic product of Women Talking is as strong as that material that it covers and the way that it conveys that information and the performances attached to it.
Yeah. It's a film that I've seen once before as well. I actually saw it with my mom the first time. We saw it in Alma Draft House in Austin, and she came out of it, and we had a very powerful discussion about the implications of some of the things that had been said and the fact that this was taking place in 2010. It was a contemporary film, as we were talking about, and I think what makes this film a step above in terms of its themes is that context of these women who are having a conversation and recognizing the fact that they have not been educated, that have been denied so many of the like what we perceive as basic human rights of learning about the world and understanding your place, and being treated fairly. And so in whatever circumstance it is, the way that they discuss education and religion, I think, compounds these issues in a really fascinating thematic way that I don't think I've ever seen really tackled, especially not to this depth before. I think the reason this film appeals to me is because I like films that are truncated. This is a single location film, 75-80% of it is in this one barn, but outside of that, a field, another house, maybe. It's very small location wise. And even though it's big open fields, you feel the fact that this is taking place only in one small colony to be an oppressive force in and of itself. These women literally have no concept of the outside world. They've never seen a map before. And I think that adds to that pressure, this sort of, even though it's like beautiful open skies and fields of soybean, I don't know what they're growing out there, it still feels contained in a really interesting way. And I also love how in the nitty gritty, it gets into the morality of this conversation. I've almost never seen a film that is so focused on just figuring out like what should we do and talking through every possible like fracture of where these branches could lead. And that concept of staying focused on one debate is what appeals to me so much in watching courtroom dramas, which are another genre of film that I gravitate towards. But this does put a really unique spin on that. Is it's not primarily educated older white men who are bantering back and forth and in a courtroom and they've got their ties on. That's what the genre really is. But using those tropes of people arguing with one another and being contained to one room and having to really think through each step, but through the lens of women primarily, obviously, but also who don't have education, whose morality is based in religion that they've never even thought to possibly question, and that they have this very personal connection to the stakes at hand. This is going to be not only their lives, how is it going to impact their lives, but the framing of the narrative around telling the story to a future child of this is what life was like before, and the process of thinking through it is something that will impact generations and generations to come. And that's, I think, the most powerful aspect of this. Of course, there's the discussion of these traumatic events that are not usually portrayed in films, but the idea that having discussions like this and portraying them in film and understanding the stakes that are at hand is something that can affect and will affect generations to come. And this is a microcosm of that. And the fact that this film got nominated for Best Picture means it'll always, at least somewhat, if you're an Oscars nerd like we are, be in that conversation of this film happened. You have to see it because it was a Best Picture nominee, and then makes you think about those things and how will that shape discussion of these going forward. I think that's all metatextually very fascinating. But I gotta put a big stinking butt in this. Is I don't think this film is as amazing as it could be. Maybe this is a very subjective thing, but the characters I found to be very similar. They're all obviously dressed similarly. They have similar backgrounds. They're all just a bunch of white women in a barn, and it was kind of difficult even on my second watch to differentiate people or remember what their relationships were to the other older, younger women in that room or what their history was. And because the characters felt very samey, I was focused more on the sort of mesh of moral communication, but not the characters, not their arcs. And that's something that I really gravitate towards in film. And this was, it was there. There were some fine character moments, but I think the film doesn't concern itself with that. But I think there's a stronger women talking script out there that is a little bit longer and gives us a couple, draws us into a couple more of the characters, so we really fully understand where they're coming from, as opposed to here, which this is an ensemble piece first and foremost, and it's trying to give as much as it can to everyone. And because I don't feel like I was in the shoes or really understood the thought process of all of the characters, if any of them.
Tanner.
Okay.
Lot to talk
yeah.
about.
Yeah, that was a lot. But
where should we begin?
I was trying to where can I say this? Where can I segue into this stuff? But I will just say, of course, I'll do the nominations. Very simple for Women Talking. Nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yep.
No acting nominations for Women Talking, which I, first time watching it was like, that's too bad. And now on a rewatch following the nominations, I'm like, that really sucks. Because I think, and Tucker, to disagree with you a little bit, that the actors, the performances, and the characters are also very strong in this. They have to portray this shifting of perspectives on a decision that means the world. It's monumental to them, their children, like you were saying. And I think that the script and the actresses do a very good job in this. I have to specifically shout out my favorite performance of the film. And I know that you said last night, at least, that it was maybe your least favorite, was Claire Foy. I think she is fantastic. From the word go, in this opening sort of montage of events, as we're getting a narration, we're getting settled into the environment of the film, we see her, she attacks the shack these men are being held in, the makeshift holding cell for them. She attacks it with a scythe and attempts to kill them. In the opening minutes of the film, Claire Foy in this film, to me, her character is rage. It is righteous rage, of course. You side with her immediately because you're like, of course you would want to, inflict violence back upon them, seek revenge for what they had done to you, to other women, to her 4-year-old daughter, as she reveals about nearly an hour into the film. And I think that Foy really translates the rage that she feels into understanding of the other women's perspectives, of why they need to leave, of why they cannot stay and fight, why that, and how that fits into her faith that she still abides by, but acts quite she blasphemes a number of times in this film. And the women's reactions to that are very interesting. How she said she will kill, she wants to kill because of this. And yeah, I just love Claire Foy in this. But Jessie Buckley, of course, is fantastic. Rooney Mara, as we said. I don't know the actors' names for the two older women in the barn, but I thought they were also very good.
I have
But
them
yeah.
actually.
Oh, you do?
Look
Okay.
at you.
Yeah, Judith Ivey and Sheila McCarthy.
Yes, Sheila McCarthy. She plays Greta, I believe,
Yeah.
right? The thinner woman, and yeah,
With
she
glasses,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, with the glasses, she's super good. I thought maybe my second favorite performance of the film. But
Yeah.
where do you guys want to go with these talking performances here?
I will say that Rooney Mara is my favorite performance. Ona, I think the relationship with August, our blossoming romance, but also her perspective, and as kind of our central character, if you could call her that, in the ensemble, she is narrating the film, pulling us forward. But I think
It's not her.
it's not her.
She's not narrating. No, it's one of the younger girls.
Yes, you're right. But
Yeah.
she is pregnant during these scenes, and so we get lots of shots of her like thinking and caressing her baby in her belly, and like thinking like, well, what does this go forward? But I find that she has the most interesting stuff to say, and is always like shaking up the scenes and really causing the paradigm to shift for these women. And I think that her performance is really affecting. The stuff with her in August like really got me, made me very emotional. I think that as an ensemble cast, the film does a pretty good job of actually differentiating these characters. When I'm thinking about them in my head, I think of their personalities as being very well differentiated and displayed. We have our hot-headed ones who want to kill. We have the ones who just want to leave and don't want to have anything to do with it. And their choice in what they want to do like is very indicative of their personality. And I feel like the film allows us to see into their thinking through the way that they, how they pick a solution, and then the ways that they talk about it, like gives us a very big insight into I think the religion is super important in this film. I really think we got to talk about that because of the way the film continues to hold the religion as like a central concept or a central tenet of this community that they can't give up, and they kind of don't, which I find very admirable. I was expecting them to almost.
Yeah, I think to sort of weave between what all of you guys have been saying, I think part of the reason why they not run together, but maybe don't feel as distinct as they otherwise would have in a different script is that Women Talking really is not concerned, in my opinion, that much with the audience understanding the before of where the narrative takes place. It's not a very traditionally structured narrative in that what feels like should be in a different film the act, our first act, the discussion, the inciting incident, we leave. The entire film is a discussion, and we're into the barn so quickly that we don't come to understand the even the basic like familial relationships between people as we enter. But ultimately, I don't really think the film is concerned with that. I think what the film is concerned with more, as Timo is saying, is differentiating these people not through name or through personality traits, but the ways in which they come to embody these different perspectives. And in my opinion, almost different emotions. For me, I almost view the film kind of metaphorically as though like the barn is a brain, and all of these people are almost like inside out-esque characters, wherein they are an emotion or a through line or a thought that are all in conversation with each other. Now, this is more of just like how I perceive the narrative. I don't think that's a very like supported metaphorical reading of the film, but I think nonetheless the fact that we have all of these clashing perspectives not only allows for incredible moments of frustration to come to the surface. I think, to your point, Tanner, Claire Foy is exceptional in all of the monologues she delivers, but especially the one in which she talks about men raping her 4-year-old child. To me, moments like that are this synergy between the success of the script and the success of the performance. And to me, women talking is the marriage of those two facets of film, and that's what it is. But it is also, I think, not as concerned about differentiating characters because it is really concerned, in my opinion, foremost with the discussion about about a perspective that we could never understand, which is what happens to these women when they are victimized and the recourse is not purely legal. It becomes interpersonal and it becomes emotional.
Becomes
And
moral.
what does
It's a
make
purely
becomes moral?
moral quandary
Yeah.
for them. There's no question of really legality. They really don't concern themselves with
No.
whether or not the men who did this go to prison. They're like, what are we going to do?
Well, they
You know,
also, I think, specifically mention a couple points of why they don't concern themselves with it. They're not going to the police. They're not worried about what's gonna, or they are worried about what happened when the men come back. But what's happening in the town as some of them are locked up and they're posting bail or whatever, is because they recognize that there is no way for them to express this legally. Frankly, I don't even think they're aware of the legal system or the fact that they have, like, legally they have the right to go and report the actions that have been reported to them, because I don't think that almost any of them have ever even left their colony. Maybe they've gone to sell their crops at a market or whatever, but I think that insularity of how little they know about modern America, about their rights as people that living in modern America, keeps it like detached from what you expect a conversation of this kind to be. If these sort of actions were happening to someone that we know in our communities, we would say, yes, find a legal way to approach this, to distance yourself from the people that have caused you harm, to allow there to be legal repercussions. But they only have like interpersonal repercussions of, look, if the men come back and they continue doing this and we let them get away with it, that is only on our lack of taking a stand and not teaching our children, which I think we got to get to the teaching part. That's one of the most interesting things of the movie. It's very interpersonal in that way. They see it as us and the people we know. There's not this society at large or legality at large that inform every one of our decisions on like criminal actions. Like, we think of crime, we think of, okay, the police and the trial system and yada yada yada, not people, like ideas and concepts and like structures, social structures, not like what we're stripped down to the bare minimum here of, you did this, I do this, and what's the outcome. I think that's really fascinating.
In some ways, I think that the setting, I want to talk about the setting of this film, because to me, I feel like it there is more to it than just look at how horrible it is that these women are entrapped in this community in 2010. Look how horrible it is that this stuff is happening in 2010. I don't really think it's about 2010. I think the film is trying to push us beyond that into a realm where it's like, look at how horrible this shit is. Like, it doesn't matter when you think it is, no matter, like, and that it doesn't matter if you think that they could go to the judges, because the way that their society works is that the men rule, and the way that our society works is the men rule it. And so, like, while the film uses our setting to, I feel like, not trick, but mislead our viewers to thinking down one path when in reality it's another, is actually making poignant commentary about our current 2023 lives, or at least the way that women in this country and across the world live their lives. But I have not reached I would probably have to like watch the movie again and maybe read like a review or something to come to this like full thematic grasp of what's going on, because I think it is operating at a pretty high level in terms of like, not just what are the characters saying and what are these points that they're discussing amongst each other, but like, what is the film saying by having these characters talk about this stuff?
I think what's interesting about it, to your point, Timo, is that, so I came into the film having no clue about time or place.
I thought to myself at one point in the first half of the movie before the big reveal, I was like, what time is this? I was like, I have no idea when this is taking place, because they'd set up their religious insular community.
The only signal is that they've got the orange, don't hit the back of the carriage
Oh,
thing.
the slow vehicle hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Hard
it's,
to
like,
notice that.
blindingly orange. So I think it's very obvious. But that could also be from like any time period within the last like 50 years or what. I don't know when they invented that.
Yeah.
Right. I think what's effective about it, and I think what's effective about it releasing in our moment is like in terms of both legislation and like social conversation, there's a real regression of women's rights. And I think this is an especially prescient film when you draw into conversation the sort of social cachet that someone like an Andrew Tate might have in the culture that is sort of rewarding these sort of regressive and misogynistic values towards women at the same time that
Yeah.
our governmental structures are doing the same. I think the ways that the film sort of paints us in a way out of time, but also in a way that as viewers situates us in this uncomfortable and uncanny position wherein our contemporaneous society feels colonial. I think it is in part a reflection of sort of the political climate we're in, because this is very stupid. But I started thinking to myself, this is like, I'm just trying to ground it in various ways. This narrative is taking place 2 years after Obama has been elected for the first time.
Mhm.
This narrative is taking place after Iron Man has been out and after people have been playing Halo and all of this stuff. You think about all of these things that make our world
And
like,
in like not very many years, like 4 years, gay marriage will be legalized across the country.
right. You think about all these things, both trivial as I'm saying, or very socially important as you're saying, and then you ground that against this place that feels in part like it's like we should be marching off to the Civil War maybe, or doing something. And I think that forces me to contemplate the decisions that people in political and social power in 2022 are making, that don't put us in that don't put us in a world that looks like this, but has values that walk back towards it.
Has a lot of
And I
values that
think-
go that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, to me, the real sobering element that I mentioned when we began.
Yeah, and I think it's also timeless in the fact that it's purely moral quandaries. Again, as we addressed earlier, I was listening to, after I saw the film, I listened to the Mark Maron interview with Sarah Polley, where they sort of talk about her entire career, but of course, they address this film in particular. And something that she said was that what she was writing in the part where I believe it's the character, you pronounce it Mayal, the shorter one with glasses, where she sort of breaks down and has a panic attack, and afterwards she says they made us disbelieve ourselves, and she singles out that line in particular, in this interview, saying, in that time, in their faith, they are made to believe that they are being, sort of foolish because they are women, or they've been misled and tricked by Satan, even.
Yeah.
Whereas today, in our modern world, that happens to women who experience rape and abuse, but it's in the court system. It's, are you sure you experienced you experienced this in this
He
way?
said, she said.
Yeah, exactly. What color shirt was he wearing? What time was this exactly? And making these women doubt themselves in these way. The women talking is full of sort of these connective tissues where Sarah Polley and I guess the original author of the book is able to connect these things in seemingly worlds and ideals that are so disparate. A Mennonite colony who are trapped in, like, I don't know, the 1890s or something like that, and 2010 America, and 2022 America, or excuse me, 2023 America. But yeah, there is so much connective tissue there, and that is a testament to the writing of this film, but of course a condemnation of the modern world in which we live.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to talk about, the modern world in which we live. Timo, you brought it up, our still very male-dominated world, how this film addresses the patriarchy as a societal structure, I think, is very interesting. Because, of course, we talked about a lot of the performances here, but one that we've neglected to bring up is Ben Whishaw as August, the sole male, or adult male character in the film. And how he
like
just
the only
exudes,
speaking male part in the film.
how he exudes such gentleness and patience in his performance, and his being a secretary and taking the records for these women and their discussion.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. And the one moment of Ben Whishaw that sticks with me is when they ask him if these young boys are a threat to women. And he has this monologue where he says they are creatures of unbridled emotion, including empathy, but they have little impulse control. And how young men, Abram, you brought up Andrew Tate, and that's a fantastic example, can be molded in such ways to be, to be predatory, to be abusive, or, in the line of August in this film, to be patient and empathetic. I think it is very measured in the way that it talks about the patriarchy.
Yeah, I think that his inclusion is what makes this film feel so thematically whole to me. I think the fact that we have a different male perspective, one that is different even from what the traditional man in this community would be like. He has been exiled for years. His role is out of an educated person who has returned solely not to support this community in sort of its oppressive way, but to hopefully work to free it and free the future children by educating them of kindness, of empathy, and hopefully understanding that there can be a better future. I think that his simpleness is what makes his character so powerful, and it's when he is making very simple movements of putting his head in his hands or writing something down furiously. You can see is like being very focused, and the ways that he responds to the women, and by recognizing the role that he plays in the situation, which is so incredibly unique. I can't even like compare it to another male role in a film. Of he's the outlier here. He's the man in the room, but not in the powerful way. In the way of, I need to understand that my perspective does not add water to their conversation, but can add context as an educated person. I think that the way that he talks about the stars and about centrifugal force, and he understands all these scientific concepts that we were taught in high school, relatively basic education for us.
Maybe even earlier.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I learned what the stars were probably elementary school easily.
Not me. I only got to that in college.
But I think that he's again, as I said, he's what makes this film feel so thematically whole, because he brings this outside perspective about education and about a male perspective that makes it feel like us as a group of white boys have someone to be the emotional in of a male character. And the way that he talks about educating is one of the most interesting parts of this movie, and where I think that it feels so salient to the larger message of education and understanding and making choices can be what impacts future generations. It's him saying the boys can be taught. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, they pose a threat. But if you take the risk with the presumed positive, that there is a way to teach these younger men to be better, to be the better men that will change your lives, and why you should take them with you. Is, yes, they pose a small threat, but that doesn't mean that you need to completely ostracize them, because there is that potential. And it gives the movie that spark of hope that I think is really exceptionally powerful, especially in those sequences of him doing narration and just a bunch of boys in old-fashioned clothing like mucking about and like walking on top of a fence and throwing a ball and spanking a horse. I don't know what they're doing, but like it gives it this hope for the future that I found really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think the film has a lot of hope. I'll just throw this one little bit where the film emphasizes this notion that like your people are not born as assaulters. They are not like, there's the line where Ona says like, even though this baby of mine is from a man who attacked me, I love the baby because the baby did no wrong, just like the man that attacked me did no wrong before he was born. And I think the film takes a holistic approach to like understanding this battle, essentially, in where it says that it's not about you are like this because you are a man, you are like this because you're a woman. It's like you are like the way you are because of how you have been taught and how you've been modeled. And that, yeah, babies are innocent, and they don't. And even if the baby that you like, you know, is illegitimate, might have health problems, like these women are choosing to love them because they see no way that the baby has done any wrong. And I find that in this discourse, especially regarding sexual assault, the sexual assault of women, especially en masse like this, it can get to the point where like, yeah, like every single dude is horrible. And in this village, they all are because they all support each other, right? But except for August, who's there hanging out. And that's why, he's a good dude because he's not in town. So the way that this film doesn't fall into the trap of just being like men bad, like all men are horrible because some men, or in this movie, most men do this thing, do these, not this thing, I'll be specific, commit horrible acts.
I'll need a minute to get this all out. But
Okay.
to me, this character of August is very, very important to me. Because I think that the notion of teaching men is so important, and teaching men through example. And I think that first, just on a filmic level, Ben Whishaw brings a lot to this role in terms of sort of this forlorn and emotionally wrought character. You see it in his eyes a lot, and you see it in this sort of wavering smile he has, wherein in a very for the constructions in pop culture and in film, atypically masculine, but in my opinion, archetypally importantly masculine way of putting himself aside to be there for these women as they need.
Mm-hmm.
The restraint he's able to convey on his face, I think, is an amazing acting moment. I also just think that it is such a powerful message because what he's conveying in that monologue he gives at the end is the truth, in that a lot of these conversations in our world, when they end up talking about rape and about patriarchy and men, we end up in this sort of reductive, sort of like conservative commentator, not all men talking point, the way you sort of end up with a not all cops talking point or whatever, in which you sort of individualize an issue. But I think what is so great about the portrayal of this character and how he's written is that he makes it a systemic issue, but not, as you're saying, Timo, a blanketly systemic issue. There is a nuance to it, and there's a solution, and the solution is education, and the solution is a positive display of masculinity. And I think that there's something really wonderful about this character who is struggling with deep mental health issues to the point where he is planning to kill himself before he gives the gun away at the end of the film, wherein we see this man who is deeply flawed and working through his own challenges, but supporting the people around him and being a role model for emotional vulnerability and for empathy and for education. Because while he is more educated, there is no quote unquote man-splaining or whatever you want to say. It is very organic. He is a very good person, and ultimately what the film is saying is we need more good role models. I think that's a big theme of the film, and it's a theme I resonate with quite a lot, because I do not think in our real world, in a pop culture sense in particular, that there are many good male role models. And part of what I take away from the film is not only an opportunity to get a perspective on sexual assault that I could never understand through these women, but an illustration that I can point to of the importance of good male role models who are emotional, albeit strong, but in ways wherein those ideas are in conversation, not opposition with each other. And so I love this character, and I think it's so beautifully reinforced by that performance. And alongside Claire Foy, I would have also loved a nomination for Ben Whishaw for supporting actor.
Yeah.
Judd Hirsch.
Yeah, well.
Ben Whishaw, by the
Abram-
way, is Q in No Time to Die,
Yes.
if you didn't notice
And the
that.
other.
And he's
also,
Q in most of the James Bond movies as of late.
He's also the voice of Paddington.
Oh,
I
really?
did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, man, love him even more now.
Exactly. But Abram, thank you for bringing up Claire Foy, because we talked about how Ben Wishaw's August fits into this narrative, but I really want to get back to the heart of the film, which is, I think, our our trinity of performers that are Rooney Mara as Ona, Claire Foy as Salome, and Jessie Buckley as Mariche. I think it's really interesting how each of them really embody one of the three choices that the women of this colony have to make. Ona is very much in line with the more pacifist line of just leaving. We have to leave because that is the most logical, best, least violent option. Whereas Claire Foy, Salome, is very much like stay and fight. She means it in the most literal sense, of course. She's going to get violent, but she feels that there needs to be retribution wrought on these men. And then Jessie Buckley's Mariche is interesting in that she is a product, or she is a victim of abuse. She has children that are anchoring her to this place, and she feels as though they need to stay and forgive these men because this is their home. She has a family here, and that's what needs to be done to move forward. And how each of these perspectives shifts over time is really interesting when they do end up, more closely aligning with Ona's point of view, leaving. But even the idea of leaving and forgiveness is brought up in this, and how
I have a specific line about forgiveness if you want me to read that out.
Just hit me with that, Tucker.
It was, is forgiveness forced upon us true forgiveness? And there was some context and after context, but I thought that line was very powerful. So much so, I wrote it down.
Yeah, wow. More from that Sarah Polly interview on Mark Maron's podcast is she brings up this notion of how do you forgive people who took advantage of their position inside of institutionalized sexism and misogyny. And that's something that Rooney Mara brings up. She's like, we will eventually have to forgive these men. And that's born out of their faith, of course, and your own personal feelings on that can be drawn out from your moral system. But she feels as though that they do eventually have to forgive them. And the only way that can happen is if they remove themselves from their presence. If they can, and they can eventually forgive them in a spiritual sense. Yeah, and I just have a lot of thoughts on how their faith influences all three of these characters, how they influence like this idea of democracy that is in this film, and coming to a consensus from multiple different perspectives, feuding perspectives, forgiving one another, recognizing your own blind spots in your perspective. I think it's quite beautiful in how it portrays and weaves together these characters in this way.
Yeah, I think that the idea of education versus faith, or education and faith, I think is another one of the very fascinating themes that this film wrestles with, because their morality comes from a place of not only lack of education, but the root of their education and their decision making and their morality being, we need to do this because the elders have told us this is so, our faith tells us this is so, and if we are subverting that, whether it's for what we perceive to be good or bad, there are the religious consequences of, if we leave, we can't get into heaven. Like, there's multiple moments where, like, don't you want to go to heaven? Like, that's the ultimate goal of all of this. And as someone who's not religious, I often find it very difficult to ground morality and decision making, obviously not my own, but understanding others' decision making in the religious context. But I think this film does a pretty good job, as good a job as I think you can do, to sell the idea of this religion meaning so much to these women that they're making the ultimate choice to push back against it in a serious way, but in a way that they sort of reconcile with their faith, which I find really fascinating, especially because they're using discussion as a kind of way to educate each other about what they know about the world. Is they each bring somewhat of their own perspective, whether it's because they have a certain experience with their own husband, or the way that they were assaulted in the past, or their age, variety of ages in this group. They don't have traditional education. They can't read, they can't write. I really think that the moments where they're like, yeah, we don't know what these things say because we were never taught that, to be very fascinating. And they contextualize this conversation about faith and about different perspectives in the most insular way that you can, is just talking to each other divorced of larger reality. Like we're gonna have a conversation about morality. We're gonna bring in politics. We're gonna bring in like differing religious structures. But frankly, I'm not even sure they know that there are other religions out there or how aware they are of the United States as a place or the, as I said earlier, like a legal system or government systems. These things that shape our discussions of morality and of our opinions on things. Like we can't divorce ourselves from that. So it's really refreshing to get such a distinct perspective from people that operate entirely different from me. They are religious rural women, and I have never been and never will be any of those things. And so I really find it fascinating how, even as someone who is like pretty much 180 on a lot of those labels, I'm able to understand through the meticulous thought process. This movie's so meticulous with, okay, someone brought this up, let's talk about that for 3 or 4 minutes and bring it to an interesting close that ties it in thematically and starts us on our next conversation. It sparks a spark in someone's mind that will come up next scene or will come up a couple scenes from now. I find that pacing to be very, very fascinating.
Your thought, Tucker, about the film being very narrow focused in its morality discussion, kind of, I'm not going to go back into the setting, not going to rehash that, but it does make me think that there is a version of this movie that exists not set in this colony in which we do bring all of those other elements in. And I think that, because I think that your basic premise can be set up anywhere in the world, it's true anywhere, but the discussions could become muddled and clouded by all these other aspects of modern life, that by stripping them away and placing our characters in a setting where they don't think about them, and then as an audience we don't have to think about them, leads us to this like very narrow and very focused moral discussion that plays out in the film that doesn't
it doesn't
feel like it wanders. It doesn't feel like we're going off track. It feels like everything is so tightly knit as the community is, I guess, and that like draws me through the film, because I don't feel like I'm wasting time learning about having them talk about something that doesn't seem important, you know?
Yeah, but especially because you can easily imagine a version of this taking place elsewhere in a more urban community, one that has more education and vastly differing perspectives, where the group of women are half religious, half non-religious. And guess what? It never gets anywhere because the only the basis of their morality is so vastly different that like the women who don't want to leave because they want to go to heaven, that's their perspective. And the ones who are like, oh no, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like, of course we're going to leave. That's better for us and for our future. Like those would like the polarity of our society is so antithetical to like the progress that they were able to make here. But I think that through the education theme of this movie, it like even that can be brought to our ridiculously polarized conversations.
I want to bring up, because I feel like our discussions of how the religion influences these characters and their decisions is sort of missing a key element, a key line in this film, and it comes from Greta, one of the two older women in this council, and she says, "We are leaving because our faith is stronger than the rules." And I find that to be one of the key lines of the entire film, and really the key phrase to understanding the role of faith as a theme in this film. Because they are transcending their institutionalized faith, the faith of the elders. They're unlocking the faith that drives them, that drives them as human beings, that makes them behave in the ways that they behave, and fuels the discussion throughout this entire film. Their discussions about forgiveness, about about hate, about hatred and retribution and things like that. It's this faith that is more than what they've been told. It's this faith that they feel within themselves, that transcends the rules, that assures them that what they are doing is the right decision. They talk about maybe we can find more men of God who can sort of absolve us of this, and that idea is sort of shut down as like, we don't need more men of God. What we need is our understanding of faith, and I think that is what that key line is is that I don't find their ideas of faith to be narrow at all in this film. It's very transcendent of the ideas of scriptured religion. And that's why I love how this film deals with faith, and how each of these characters has their own ideas of it. I keep coming back to Claire Foy, but I'll say the moment where she's like, I will stand here and challenge God if he thinks that destroying evil where it lives is not the right course of action. And that is
by staying here makes me a murderer, but I will be a murderer because God can judge me for what I've done, not the other people.
Yeah, that is such a fascinating sort of perspective on judgment and morality and doing the right thing in the face of your faith, and like being so self-assured that like God can judge me if he wants. I know I'm doing the right thing, and still being committed to your faith. Again, that's why Claire Foy is my favorite character in the film.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that you probably could have constructed a much more reductive version of this film wherein part of the message was that in a secular society this wouldn't have happened in the same way.
Because in a secular society, this shit happens all the time still.
Right. I think the film is very good about, if anything, questioning these more dogmatic elements of religion, as you're saying, Tanner, in this narrative that they're not being injected with cow tranquilizer and then raped, but they're being punished by the devil. Like, the film leaves space for the sort of recontextualization and challenging of faith, while nonetheless upholding the elements of personal faith that remain important. Because I think that there is a sort of an impulse among especially a lot of left-leaning people contemporarily to ascribe, blanketly ascribe a lot of social issues to religion. And I think the film nicely gives the characters, as you guys are saying, space to challenge it and reconcile with it, and use it in a way that's productive and cathartic. Another really important line, I think, and I don't remember exactly who said it or exactly how it was said, but to paraphrase, like, we're spending all this time talking about what's going to happen to us in the next life, but shouldn't we also care what happens in this one too?
Yeah. I think that's I don't know.
I can't remember who it was, but I think it's interesting just how we rationalize and sort of contextualize the role of faith positively and negatively. Because I agree with Tucker in that I am not religious in any stretch of the imagination. I'm not. If you don't like religion, you think it's dumb, you're a blank.
Atheist or
Atheist,
agnostic?
Well, agnostic is you don't know what you believe, right? I can't remember which is which.
Yeah.
Agnostic is the sitting on the fence. Maybe a God exists, but I'm not going to commit. Atheist is religion doesn't exist. There is no higher power.
Right. I'm the most like neutral pole possible. My hands are washed of the entire matter.
Sure.
Perfect.
You ask me you're like, what's going on with God? I'm like, who? so for me,
I'm like, don't you mean the Buddha?
I do like Buddhism, but for me, that's why I think this religious discussion is so fascinating in part, because I like that. I like this because I agree with Tanner. I think it's quite a wide lens on faith.
Yeah, I think that the way this film has the women take control of their lives in very many different ways throughout the film. And in religion, I think, at least the way I interpreted it, the elders are men. The elders are not, we don't see them.
Yeah, no chance they have a female priest or whatever. No chance.
No. They, while like wrestling themselves out of control of patriarchal society, manage to come to a religious and faith-based understanding of taking control of their own faith and basically cutting out the middlemen of the elders and allowing their own, like you guys have been saying. I just think that this theme of taking control is clearly applied to religion when they discuss like what they believe and what is going to happen to them, what happens in the next life, and when they think about forgiveness and what that means in a religious sense. They are able to take control of their own faith in that moment. And I think maybe that's why it feels good to us, the way that the religion is discussed in the film, because the characters, we don't have to believe it, but we see that the characters believe it wholeheartedly. And they, despite what might be, this bad stuff that might be said to them in service, like the faith has a positive impact and they can all think about it positively. There's the moment where they're like, we must not think bad thoughts, must not think bad, they think they're in one character's.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that I appreciate the extension of that theme into religion and the ways that it so I don't know, easily like allows us to be in it and to be immersed, but to be open our eyes to being empathetic to characters that would be, at least on the religious perspective, we would have less of an understanding. I'm not religious either, so it's like I've gone to church a little bit, not much.
If there's anything else to say on the faith front here, I think we can. But I do want to circle back to the themes of patriarchy, as I sort of want to try and dig into specifics of character here. But is that all good? Can I talk about that, or do we have more faith here? Okay. So I think another fantastic line, a key theme line that we get is, and I don't know who says it initially. I think it's one of the two older women here who says, the men taught the boys the benefits of power, and they were excellent students. It's something along that line. And because this film again does address how the patriarchy negatively affects, of course, women, but also boys, as they are sort of lured into these roles of abuse and abusing their power. But I feel it comes around again so brilliantly. Have to really applaud Sarah Polley writing this one here, where Jessie Buckley's character, as one who wants to stay and forgive, somewhat maybe anchored by her children here, somewhat maybe lulled into her place in the world by the abuse that she experiences from her husband. After coming to the realization that that the only choice for her and for her children is to leave, says the line, "The men were not the only excellent students." And I think that's fantastic as well, because it is, it is indoctrination into the system of the patriarchy that she is directly experiencing, and the realization that she comes to. Jessie Buckley was a favorite performance in this for a lot of people, and I can definitely see that. I think she has maybe the biggest swing in perspective from being like, we have to stay here, we have to forgive, to we have to leave, and that is the only way forward for me and my children and in my community. And so, yes, I wanted to just acknowledge that is another very measured, very insightful, very intellectual reading of the patriarchy through the lens of the circumstances of women talking.
I think Jessie Buckley also has just a great acting moment when she hurriedly re-enters the barn and has her final conversation with August as she's gathering up the axe and the various weaponry. I just think the way she embodies like this
Isn't that Claire Foy?
Is it? I don't think so.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
He
peeling back
gives
the
Claire
curtain a
Foy the
little
gun.
bit. Yeah, peeling back the curtain a little bit. In the costumes, Claire Foy and Jessie Buckley can look quite similar at times. I will give you
Jessie
that.
Buckley got injured.
Yes,
right?
yes.
She has her arm in a sling. She has a big black eye.
Yeah.
She's the one who got abused by her husband.
Because Claire Foy has like the 14-year-old son or whatever that she tranquilizes.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's why she goes back into the barn.
Well, I mean, in that case, then
yes,
reset. Talk about a great acting moment, but I've already praised Claire Foy a lot. I'll praise a different moment that I definitely know is Jessie Buckley.
Okay.
And it's actually an exchange between her and I believe Ona is the other one in the exchange, and it points to a larger element of the interpersonal dynamics. I think is quite fascinating, in which Jessie Buckley becomes blamed in part for her inaction towards her husband and the notion that because of her inaction, she is going to cultivate an environment wherein her boys become monsters, I believe is to the effect of what she's told, I believe, by Ona. And the exchange they end up having in which Jessie Buckley has this moment where she snaps and calls Ona a whore, I think is quite fascinating, not only because it's so well delivered, the anger, but I think it also points to the ways in which the infighting between the women is quite fascinating, in that it's also reflective of the ways that in contemporary society it rings very true in the disbelief and the anger and the disagreement that ends up forming between people, as people unfortunately sometimes in these situations of sexual assault take a side, and there are these different sides and these different poles. And even just on a human level beyond that, all these women have these disagreements that I find quite fascinating. The other one that I really like, I believe this is between Claire Foy and definitely Majol. Is that it? Majol?
I think it's Mayall.
Mayol.
Yeah.
When she has a panic attack and she's smoking. And is it Claire Foy or Jessie Buckley who's like, we've all been assaulted, but you can't seem to deal with it.
One of the two.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
remember
it's
that
probably... I feel like it's probably Claire Foy. She's more the
Yeah.
firebrand type in this.
I think that's such an interesting moment because there's also these elements of identity that flare up, both in that moment, but then in terms of sort of gender identity and the character of Melvin,
Yeah.
who is seemingly transitions after being raped, and the sort of like fight for recognition amongst these women, wherein she has this very or he has this very emotional moment where he like begins to cry when the name Melvin is used towards the end. I think the ways that the film in the way that it does for men or religion, it makes the women not a monolith, but a sort of collective of individuals.
Yeah.
And the ways that they have conflict still in service of this larger goal, I find to be quite fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I say it is like a pure ensemble here. No one person gets more shine, more play than any other one person. Maybe some of them have showier performance moments, like when Claire Foy gets to attack the shack full of men with a scythe, or challenge God in that barn and stuff like that. But even like an understated performance like Rooney Mara's as Ona, she is very... You get the intelligence in her, this quietness that resounds within her, and this how she has basically her entire thought process laid out. That this child of a man who raped her is like, I love this child and it's not even born yet, and it is innocent in this moment, and we need to cherish that innocence and form it into a positive role for moving forward out of this community and making our own one. So yeah, I Rooney Mara also fantastic. I just think that every performance in this is very, very good.
Can we talk about some more filmic elements now?
Yeah.
Sure.
We've been very script core, which I love.
Yeah, we have. It's the one nomination it got. We kind of have
That's
to.
also what Quest is. Let's be honest.
Yes,
Let's be
it is.
real.
I will be I will be
we-
real about this movie though, and say that I really feel like the thematic, what the film is trying to say, is not communicated very much, besides from our editing, is not really communicated through filmic elements like shot composition and lighting and costumes, and the sound design I don't think really plays into telling me what I should be getting out of the film. I feel like the editing does all the heavy lifting, and all the other categories are just there in service of creating a movie rather than propelling our thematic ideas forward and having the film say even more. I feel like the film itself is script core, and so these other elements, we don't get frames that like a low angle frame that makes us believe this character is very powerful or stuff like that. It's all very neutrally shot, which to me, I want more. I want the director's hand a little more in telling me what they think of this situation and of reality. As I don't know, in the Freudian sense, films are our collective dreams, and they can be used to analyze our current ideas. And this film doesn't use the filmic language to present enough current ideas, I feel like, outside of the script.
And this is the last time I'll say this, but in the Sarah Polley interview that I listened to, she mentioned wanting to try and make it as cinematic as possible, and she mentioned that, like, because she understands that it can feel stage play like in its setting and its construction. She's like,
I'm surprised this has not been a play, to be 100% honest.
I know that. Yeah, exactly.
Build a barn
will
set,
be.
slap some people on the stage, boom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is such a
not
a
easy.
new novel that I would not be
Oh,
surprised.
that's fair. Yeah.
But no, she said that I did try to make it as cinematic as possible, and sorry, Sarah Polly, but I don't know how much you succeeded in that, frankly. I mean, to be fair, she hasn't made a movie in 10 years, and her last film was a documentary about, or like a faux documentary about her own family, I think. So, I can free.
You also know who hasn't made a film in 10 years? Todd Field and James Cameron.
Yes, fair point. But yeah, to that extent, I feel that the camera is. I mean, the cinematography is well done here. I mean, set construction, costumes, and everything are very period, or not period accurate, but setting accurate rather. And it's very good. But I just don't know how cinematic this film feels for whatever that word really means.
It succeeds
So-
in keeping me watching a one scene, 6-character story that could be done on a play. That could be done as a stage play. It succeeds in keeping me interested, and so maybe that's perhaps a good example of its cinematographicness.
So I'm largely of the opinion that I'm not even sure that it's incredibly successful at a baseline level. I do think that in our conversation we've sort of reached a point of maybe the costuming not doing a good enough job even in differentiating character. Now again, I get that at a certain point everybody wears the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to be in a house that looks similar, and there's going to be a homogeny to all of it. But I do think some more inventive work on a production design level could have continued the uncanny sense of time and place, because there are moments like putting on a band-aid or seeing the census truck go by, or seeing August write with a ballpoint pen, or going inside of a house for an insert shot with a baby on a tiled floor. I think that there are elements of production design that are really effective in becoming eerie in terms of where we're set, but I don't think that it's effective on the whole. I also am of the opinion that the washed out color grading is, to me, a detriment to what is being created here, because I do think, again, in perhaps in service of the uncanny, having a little bit more saturation might have been very interesting at times, or at least playing with it.
There's a little bit, and I think that little bit and not leaning into it is what disappoints me the most about the color grading choice, which I agree, I think is a net negative for me, because I do feel like that also contributes to it feeling samey across the course of the film. Is not only are these characters wearing similar outfits because probably a couple of women in the community made them, and they're using the couple kinds of cloth that they've either made themselves or have purchased somewhere else. It's obviously very insular in that way, and intentionally so. But having a lack of color grading also means that sometimes, especially if it's at night, there's not much color difference between their skin and this clothes that they're wearing, or the background and the clothes that they're wearing, which can be hard visually to maintain visual interest. And I was watching it, especially for the color grading, and I was like, okay, there are moments where the sun comes up and there's more color, and you can see like the tint of their skin a little more, and especially with the orange, slow the heck down, don't hit the carriage sign, like that is a bright orange. But these elements aren't played with, as you said, and I think that if it had felt more intentional because there was the possibility to be more varied, I would have felt like, okay, I understand this decision a little more. As it stands, it's so static in the color grading, and that sort of wraps a blanket of gauze around the entire thing of, I want to appreciate the set design and the costuming, but they all look gray because the color grading is so heavy that it drains any intrigue I can have in a visual sense. I do think the one visual choice that I do really like is the time of day changing. Of course, that happens across the course of the film. That gives different scenes different tone. But primarily in the first few scenes that are set during the daytime, the bright light that is shining through the slats of the barn, I found to be very visually striking. In the way that it frames things, and the lighting is done in just a way so it's like it's not overpowering them. You can just see their faces, but it makes this like geometric background that I found to be I don't know if it's like thematically interesting in any way, which might play into what Timo was saying.
Kind of looks
they
like
could-
prison bars in a way.
Sure, yeah, it could, but also it's not like leaning into that. So like, yeah, you kind of gotta make the inference there. But yeah, visually, I think this movie is bland. I think it's boring. I think it's below average, and I think that women talking as a visual filmic experience could have been significantly more engaging to me. I like colorful things. If they had gone with a little bit more saturation, a little more variability in the saturation, which is why I push back at, oh, the color grading is a choice and you shouldn't criticize it. I'm like, no, but it negatively impacted my viewing experience, and I think the movie would have been better if there was more saturation. So I think it's a very valid criticism.
Well,
It definitely
who's
impacts my
saying,
engagement.
Tucker, who is saying that the color grading is a
People on
choice and you
Twitter?
can't criticize it? Because
You could say that about anything, Tucker.
everything is a choice that you can criticize. That's
What I'm gonna
filmmaking.
criticize about the choice is that, okay, so in my newest and greatest media studies class, this professor of mine is always about connecting aesthetic observations. Oh God, you got to connect your aesthetic observation with your interpretive claim about the movie, and the color grading and the cinematography do not allow me to make a connection. We can make connections about the mise en scène. The film is set in this Mennonite colony, and that connects to our claim about what it's saying of these issues being still very present in real world and us kind of slipping back, as we were talking about earlier. But I can't find that linkage between why the film is graded like this and then what that is saying about this story. Is it graded like this because we're in a dull...
Color has been drained from life because of the experience.
Or is it just purely like a making us feel like we're out of time, anachronistic, almost that we got a little sepia.
But I don't
tone,
feel
guess,
like that's what the point of the movie is. The point of the movie is that these is the opposite of anachronistic. It is chronistic because
These is happening now.
because A, it's happening now, and B, the things that they're talking about are like so relevant, and so
which is why I don't think it works even in that regard.
yeah.
I do though want to talk about how I think images are used quite effectively. My one sort of major praise of the film.
What I was talking about, I think, when I said the editing does good storytelling.
Yes. Yeah, I think the editing is very effective to get us into these sequences of the women. And I mentioned this earlier, the women realizing that they have been raped or that, and then sort of the subsequent emotional release. I think the moment of, and I'm going to have no clue who, I'm not even sure if we're supposed to know exactly which character is which, but the one whose hands are covered in blood, and then she goes and smears her hands all over the wall.
Oh, that is Melvin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's probably the most striking of those like flashback, cutaway, whatever you want to call it.
And those flashbacks are horrifying, and this one is the most horrifying.
It is. It's so much blood. It's stomach churning.
Yeah, there's actually one for me that in its restraint I found actually even more harrowing. It's when it's this sort of overhead shot of the bed, and it's basically a silent shot of the woman getting up out of bed, and as she stands up, you just see this dark red puddle of blood in the mattress.
Well, a dark color of blood.
Right.
Presumably red.
I guess I have to infer.
Yeah.
And the camera lingers just long enough for you to sit in this eerily quiet moment of this woman, as though I have just gotten out of bed in the morning for class, get up and begin to walk out of frame, and there's just blood because she's been raped and her legs are covered in bruises. I think that, to me, in that restraint, there's an even greater horror, but I think you're right that in terms of just shocking imagery, Melvin smearing the blood all over the wall is like it's not going anywhere. It's similar to the fork suicide from All Quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something quick I just wanted to bring up. I think you were mentioning that I think it's Ona is the one who sort of gets up out of bed and sort of goes about her life. And it's really something that struck me is like, because what can they do? Like,
Yeah.
what
That's
do you
what's
do?
communicated by
There's a
that.
futility to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And of
Um,
course, that's what the entire film is reckoning with. What do they do?
I think what
Oh,
I do want to say,
Yeah.
an element of this film that I think we have neglected to talk about, and it's not a hugely prevalent element of the film, but I think one that also makes it feel much more genuine, is that this isn't a completely dour film. Of course, thematically and
Yeah,
topic-wise it is, but there are a number of sequences that are children playing in a field, that have happy music that remind these characters what they are fighting for to make these happy moments and the hope that they feel continue into the future. We continue to flash back to or flash over to scenes of kids playing or
Yep.
a mom having fun with her children or sharing a meal or whatever it is. The fact that this movie isn't 100% serious and down and these people are sad, of course, they've experienced something bad, but there is a spark of hope, as I mentioned earlier, and it's communicated through these cutaways to the life that they want to lead, the idealized life of children having fun, people working together, us improving our lives so it can be better for children in the future. I think that having those adds that extra layer of we can make this work, and this is what we're fighting for. And I really like the inclusion of those.
There's
and at
even
the
a
same
number of
time,
times.
though, you must remember that most of these children, in some ways, could have been born from the
True.
rapes that
Yeah.
that are the central
Absolutely true.
conflict, the
There's
issue.
even a number of times where our characters laugh. You know, something
absolutely.
strange happens. Someone tells a joke, something like that. I think it's so one of the characters jumps out a window onto a big pile of hay.
One of the younger girls, which
Yeah.
I'm questioning about the younger girls because they don't feel super important, but we haven't even
We-
touched
we
on
are-
them at all.
No, we are getting dangerously close to our cardinal rule of not going longer than the runtime of the film.
Oh God,
yeah.
it's true.
But anyway, yeah. But it's that thing of like sometimes people laugh as hard as they want to cry, as the narration
moment.
says at one of
Great
those
line.
moments.
Yep.
But as I said, we're getting close to our cardinal rule here. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed?
Is there anything for sound mode to remark about?
I like the score. It's a little bit samey, but I like it.
Yeah,
Great
the,
score.
the score works. The one sound note I have is that the sound of children playing is a sound that I hear every day because it's like a playground across my street. And even though my neighbor hates that sound, I love that sound. And the way there's just like the jovial atmosphere, it is a nice breakup to hear this. Like, in some ways, our human brains are just kind of programmed to like that noise and to be like, things are good.
Her neighbor.
Yeah, except my neighbor. Well, she was under some stress during that time when she went out and yelled at the kids playing across the street in a crazy scene. But the sound of children playing, I feel like, is an important sound to hear, and one that lifts our spirits, and one that makes us feel less bad about everything, even though I think consciously we feel very bad, but subconsciously we're like, it can be okay. Things can turn out.
That's the hope.
Eventually, they can be all right. And these children are none the wiser to what's going on right now, and that's how it should be. They need to be protected and taught to preserve their innocence.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I don't really think that the film does a whole lot with sound.
The interesting sound note is the sound of like wind chimes that play.
It's a
when we
very
flash back.
very atmospheric
Interesting.
film. It like really sets us in the setting, I feel like, but it maybe tricks us a little bit into believing that we're not in the time that we are through the use of sound. I don't hear planes, don't hear cars, don't hear stuff that would set us in a modern landscape, even though we are.
Score time?
Score time.
That's score time.
I mean, you sure we can't go another 20 minutes and just pass it?
No, we can't. Timo reminds us of that rule every so often, so we cannot.
It's
we
never
cannot
happened
break
before.
it.
Well,
it's never happened before.
Unless, Abram,
well,
unless
howdy,
you're
I
going to
intend
talk for
never to.
20 minutes straight about, do you have something that you wish to go over?
No.
Let's give it a score.
just like the idea that it could happen.
Mhm.
I just like the concept. I got a number.
Me too.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we've got a score. It is not a tie. We've added some more numbers to our list. we gave Women Talking an 8.4 out of 10. The point breakdown, starting from the top, is Tucker with an 8.7. Tanner gave it an 8.6. Abram gave it an 8.1, and I gave it an 8.0. So we think this film gets about an 8, and it got right in the middle of an 8. So there you go.
0.4.
I was shocked when I saw those things roll in because I thought that I was the lowest on this movie. I don't know why. I think we all kind of like we're on the same point for this, but like apparently I was the highest. So, but also I will fully admit my score shifted up as the discussion went on, and I realized that for a film like this that is so much about its script and its themes and what it can say as a message film for today, that is what this film needs to do, and it does that impressively damn well. And so I've raised my score probably half a point, almost a full point over the course of this discussion, because I really just think that in terms of being distinct, it does that. Never seen a film drill in like this. Never seen a film look like this. That's a little bit of a downside, but when I think a film can work in one of its elements so strongly that it subverts like what I usually go into films for. And as I said at the beginning, I still do think that some of the characters blend together. I don't like the color grading. I do think that it does feel samey in sequences because of the lack of variety in cinematography. But I almost, even though I care about those in the moment, I think in terms of my scoring, I don't let those really reflect, because this film sets out to achieve what it does, and does that, like gave us an hour and 20 minutes worth of just like talking about like every element of the world of like theme possible.
Oh, we were very talkative during this episode. Fittingly
Men
so. I would
talking
say.
About
fittingly so.
women talking.
Anyway,
I just like this. I just like this film as this sort of thematic and aesthetic, and I think quality-wise opposite of Promising Young Woman.
okay. Well, fellas, I hope
Throw a
that
jab at the end.
there you go. Well,
I'll just say that a score of 8.0 is a
we're getting so close, Timo.
It's
We gotta
okay,
go.
Tanner. Why does it
Gotta
matter?
go.
8.0 is a good movie in most regards.
It's very good.
I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I will just
Yeah.
say, and Tanner, mind your beeswax.
Oh man. Oh jeez.
I do
watching
just
We're
think
fine.
that the strength of the script, and hey, it's 12:12 midnight time for me. It's a different
I want
day
you to
for
go
me,
to.
and I'm
I
still
want
here.
you to go to bed, Abram. That's what I want.
But I want to say this first. I think that the script is just so good. And I think
Yeah.
that the themes are just so important, and they're
Yeah.
so robustly explored that, to Tucker's point, it looks kind of like Man of Steel, and it kind of doesn't do a whole lot with itself filmically. But ultimately, I think that there is also something to be said for the ways that, in particular, performance elevates this script so far above. And because I think to myself sometimes when a film leans so heavily upon its script for its merit, to where I'm like, well, maybe I would have just rather have read the book. Maybe I would have just rather read Women Talking. But I actually don't think that's the case, because I would have wanted those lines read by Claire Foy and by Jessie
Yeah.
Buckley
Mhm.
and by Rooney Mara. So I think that this
and not
is a really
Frances McDormand.
right. No, she would have just been cowering
Yeah.
in the corner. I just think that the performance is so wonderful, and I think that it is a huge shame that they didn't get nominated. And I think it's also a huge shame that MGM completely bungled the release of this film. Just
Yeah.
bungled it. Just fucking bungled it.
Yeah.
It's-
Very poorly. Yeah. And
We were
said
sharing.
It
I
also
said-
succeeded.
We were
like it beat the impossible and got a Best Picture nomination off of one
yeah,
other
w-
nomination.
We all thought that back in the season, we're like, this is like a number 3 in Best Picture. You know, where all these performances are getting nominated. Sarah Polley's getting nominated. Da 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 da. And lo and behold, United Artists MGM just really fumbled the bag on this one. But I guess since we're all giving closing thoughts, I'll try to put a bow on everything here and say that
Don't go
I mean,
long.
I know
I'm
I
watching
won't.
you,
Tucker,
Tanner.
Tucker, I won't. Everyone, I will not. Here we go. So stop prolonging me. You know, it's a very dense script. I think it's an intensely well written film, and there was a lot to talk about, and we did for nearly the entire runtime of the film. Ended up
Not quite.
I don't know if we said this, but it's at number 8 of 9 on the list, just above Triangle of Sadness. And if I may transition us into the end of the episode,
Mm-hmm.
Up next,
Up next.
rounding out.
What movie could it possibly be?
Which one could it possibly be? We're going from a intensely dense, intensely intellectual film into something equally of that measure, I would say, or not, depending on your perspective. It is the film that saved movie theaters. It is Top Gun
Spider-Man No Way Home.
Maverick.
That's me flying my plane.
Yeah.
Let me say that
yes, Abram.
High stakes here because this is something that I've made up in my head.
Yeah.
This is the rewatch of Top Gun Maverick that determines if it breaks into my top 10 favorite films of all time or not.
Hey, listen, man. This one, we saved it for last because we want to see it in theaters mainly, but this one could fucking turn on the afterburners and shoot to the top of that list, okay?
It's not impossible. Holy shit. God, guys, what a great line.
Let's talk about
Afterburn. God.
No, we gotta go.
Jesus Christ.
Rip it up.
Demo, do your little peace outro.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick. I can't wait to watch this movie. I've been saving myself to watch this movie for Quest.
You haven't seen it,
saw
Timo?
Mm-mm, no, never seen it.
What?
Never seen the
That's
first one
insane.
either. So we're gonna have a great perspective
okay.
on it.
You don't have to see this first one.
First one's very
That's
good.
not
I really enjoy it, but
It's solid.
Maverick's better.
This is one of those movies that I'm supposed to watch, so I will enjoy my time viewing it. And until then, very good discussion today. Weighty, I know. I'm gonna do something to lift my spirits after the episode for sure. But thanks for joining me to talk about men talk about women talking on the quest for the bestest. Until next time, stay cool, keep it warm, and peace.